The sun had just begun its slow descent over the barren world of Jaroth 9, casting long, eerie shadows across the cracked surface of the planet. Ethan Drayton, a seasoned ex-soldier turned scavenger, moved cautiously through the wasteland. The planet had long been abandoned after a brutal war, and now it served only as a home to those desperate enough to seek shelter in its ruins. Ethan, however, had grown used to these kinds of places. He'd spent years in battlefields far worse than this, and yet he always felt a pull toward the unknown, as if the mysteries of these forgotten worlds were calling to him. As he trudged through the wasteland, his boots crunching against the dust, his eyes scanned the horizon for any signs of danger or potential salvage. He was low on supplies and running out of time. The local traders weren't interested in anything he had to offer, and his ship had seen better days. He needed something valuable, something that could get him off this forsaken rock. But just as he was about to turn back, something unusual caught his eye. There, just a few meters ahead, lying motionless on the ground, was a strange creature. Ethan stopped in his tracks. It was nothing like he'd ever seen before. Its body shimmered with iridescent scales, reflecting the dying light in a way that almost made it look like it was part of the planet itself. Its large wings were torn, the edges shredded as if it had been through something brutal. The creature was a strange blend of animal and something more, something sentient perhaps, but Ethan couldn't tell. What struck him more than its unusual form was the unmistakable signs of life: its shallow breathing, the faint rise and fall of its chest. For a moment, he considered leaving it alone. Out here in a place like this, it could be a trap. There were plenty of predators that mimicked the appearance of helpless creatures only to attack when they were approached. But as Ethan looked closer, he saw something in its eyes, a mixture of fear and vulnerability. His instincts as a soldier kicked in. He had never been one to leave someone or something in need behind, especially not when it could be the difference between life and death. Cautiously, Ethan stepped forward, keeping his hand on the grip of his blaster, just in case. He didn't trust this creature, but he couldn't leave it to die either. It was an odd feeling. Most of the time, in this harsh galaxy, everyone was out for themselves. Trust was a rare commodity. And yet, here he was, facing an unknown creature with nothing but the hope that it wasn't a threat. The creature's wings twitched, and Ethan froze. He didn't know what kind of intelligence it had, but it was clear it wasn't completely defenseless. Still, it made no attempt to strike or flee. Carefully, he knelt beside it. The creature's eyes locked with his, its gaze intense but full of suffering. Ethan gently extended his hand, reaching for his medkit. He had seen plenty of injuries in his life, but nothing quite like this. The creature's wings were torn apart as though something had sliced through them with precision. He quickly assessed the damage and found that it wasn't beyond saving, not if he acted fast. His hands worked efficiently as he applied a biostitching gel to the creature's wounds. It wasn't the best treatment, but it would hold long enough for the creature to recover or, at the very least, survive. The creature let out a soft hiss, as though it was in pain, but didn't resist. Ethan finished the basic treatment, then sat back, his eyes still locked on the alien being. The silence between them was heavy. Something about the creature, the way it looked at him, made him feel as though he wasn't simply helping it for the sake of survival. There was a deeper connection forming, an unspoken bond. Suddenly, a voice echoed in his mind, clear but soft. "Why, are you helping me?" Ethan's heart skipped a beat. His hand instinctively reached for his blaster, but he stopped. The creature hadn't moved, and there was no sign of aggression. Slowly, cautiously, he lowered his weapon and tried to gather his thoughts. He had heard rumors about telepathic species, but he'd never encountered one. This was different, though this was direct, almost personal. I don't know," he responded, his voice strangely quiet. "I guess. I just couldn't leave you here to die." "You're not just an animal, are you?" The creature's gaze softened, and for a moment Ethan thought he saw something like gratitude in its eyes. "I am Zenka," it said, its voice calm but filled with an underlying strength. "I am not an animal, but I am not like you either. I am different." Ethan leaned back, his mind racing. He had no idea what kind of creature this was, but it was clear now that it wasn't just a wild animal. Whatever Zenka was, it was something beyond his understanding. Before he could ask any more questions, the creature's body shuddered, and it seemed to grow weaker. "What happened to you?" Ethan asked, his voice filled with concern. Zenka's eyes flickered, as if it was fighting against something. "There are forces that seek me," it said softly, its voice growing weaker. "Powerful forces. They will stop at nothing to claim me." Ethan looked around, sensing the growing tension in the air. There was something off about this planet, he could feel it in his bones. It wasn't just the wind or the desolate silence. There was something coming, something dark. But he couldn't leave Zenka behind, not now. The creature needed help, and Ethan had already made the decision to protect it. Suddenly, a loud, distant rumble echoed across the barren landscape, cutting through the silence like a blade. It was far off, but it sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. Zenka stirred, its wings fluttering weakly, but it remained still. "They're coming," Zenka said, its telepathic voice filled with dread. "You must leave now, before it's too late." Ethan's mind raced as he tried to comprehend what Zenka meant. Who was coming? What was happening? Before he could ask another question, the ground beneath them began to tremble, as if something massive was moving beneath the surface. The air grew heavier, thick with the scent of impending danger. There was no time to think. Without warning, Ethan grabbed Zenka, lifting it in his arms. The creature's wings flapped weakly, but it was still too injured to do much on its own. He had to get out of here fast. As he ran, the distant rumbling grew louder, and he could feel the presence of something closing in on them. He didn't know who or what was coming, but one thing was certain: he had just stepped into something much bigger than he ever could have imagined. The world of Ruthoria was far from the barren wasteland of Jorath 9. A rich, beautiful planet, Ruthoria was home to the ruling elite of the galaxy, its cities glittering like jewels against the backdrop of a deep blue sky. Towering spires pierced the heavens, and lush forests surrounded magnificent palaces. But beneath its pristine surface, a darker reality existed, one of power, control, and bloodshed. And at the heart of it all was Baroness Mila, the most feared figure in the galaxy. On her massive flagship, the Vornoth, Mila paced back and forth in her command room, the walls lined with screens displaying the latest data from her spies and operatives. Her cold, calculating eyes never left the flashing red indicators showing her forces advance. News of Zenka's disappearance had spread like wildfire across her empire. The creature, once thought of as little more than a companion, was now the key to something much larger, something Mila would stop at nothing to reclaim. Her mind raced as she processed the situation. The creature, Zenka, wasn't just a pet or a simple servant. It was Arcathian, a royal being with abilities far beyond any human or alien race. Zenka's species was known for its bond with its royal family, and with the creature gone, her empire was at risk. She had raised Zenka from its infancy, and over the years, their bond had become almost unbreakable. She knew that if she didn't find it soon, not only would she lose her most trusted companion, but she could also lose her empire to forces that were already hungry to tear it apart. The loss of Zenka had shaken her in ways she hadn't expected. There was something about the creature, a part of her soul, that Zenka had become. The Arcathian was not just another pet or piece in her collection, it was a symbol of her reign, her power, and her ability to control even the most powerful of beings. The fact that it was taken from her, without her knowledge, had only fueled the fire within her heart. In a low, measured voice, she spoke into her communicator. "Prepare the fleet. I want every ship, every hunter, and every mercenary to begin searching. No stone left unturned. I want that creature back, alive or dead. And bring me the human responsible. I will make an example of him." Her commands were met with quick, efficient responses. Across the galaxy, operatives were dispatched. Her forces, already well established, would soon find Ethan Drayton and the creature he had saved. No one could escape the reach of Baroness Mila, not even a scavenger on a forgotten planet like Jorath 9. Back on the edge of the galaxy, Ethan had no idea of the storm that was about to engulf him. After fleeing the strange tremor in the ground, he had carried Zenka to a nearby abandoned mining station, hoping to find a place to rest and tend to its injuries. The creature's breathing was still shallow, and it was becoming weaker with each passing minute. His heart raced as he set Zenka down on a cold metal table, his mind consumed with the need to protect the alien being. The station was a relic of the old war, a place once used for resource extraction before the planet was abandoned. It was quiet, too quiet. The air was thick with dust, and the only sound was the faint hum of an old power generator. Ethan set to work, using the remaining supplies he had to treat Zenka's wounds as best as he could. He had no idea what kind of medical treatments the creature needed, but he wasn't about to let it die on his watch. His hands moved quickly, his mind still reeling from the telepathic communication they'd shared. "Why did you come to me?" Ethan asked softly as he worked. His voice was filled with curiosity and a hint of frustration. "Why didn't you just escape on your own? You clearly have power. You could have taken care of yourself." Zenka's eyes fluttered open, a flicker of consciousness passing through them. Its voice came again, soft and telepathic, filling Ethan's mind. "I could not escape, not alone. There are forces that hunt me, forces greater than you can understand. I do not have the strength to fight them, not now. You are my only chance." Ethan frowned, his hands stilling for a moment as he processed the creature's words. He didn't understand what kind of trouble Zenka was in, but he had learned over the years that when someone or something asked for help, you didn't hesitate. He wasn't about to let anyone or anything harm the creature, not after he'd saved it. "I'll get you out of here," he said, determination in his voice. "But first, we need to get to my ship. I can't stay here for long. This place isn't safe." Zenka's wings twitched slightly, and its gaze became intense. "You do not understand. You cannot outrun them. They are already here." The hairs on the back of Ethan's neck stood up as he felt a shift in the air. He had no idea how Zenka could sense them, but he trusted the creature's instincts. He glanced toward the station's entrance, his mind racing. The distant rumblings he had heard earlier were no longer just a feeling, they were growing louder, closer, and unmistakable. A low, mechanical hum echoed through the station's walls. His hand instinctively reached for his blaster, but as he turned toward the door, his heart sank. There, on the horizon, he could see them, a fleet of ships descending from the sky, their black silhouettes blocking out the fading light of the sun. They moved in unison, precise, like wolves hunting their prey. The ships were sleek, deadly, an unmistakable sign of a military presence. Ethan could already guess who they were. The Baroness's forces had arrived. Without another word, Ethan scooped Zenka up and ran for the back exit. His mind raced as he considered his options. The station had old tunnels that led to a nearby mining settlement, but he didn't have much time. Every second counted now. He could hear the hiss of thrusters overhead, the unmistakable sound of someone coming to capture them. He had to move, and fast. He had saved Zenka from one danger, but now they were both in far greater peril. There was no turning back now. Ethan moved through the dark corridors. His thoughts were clouded with a single question: who exactly was this creature that he had saved, and why did it matter so much to the galaxy? The answers were just out of reach, but he knew one thing for certain. He was in the middle of something far bigger than himself, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The harsh lights of the abandoned mining station flickered as Ethan sprinted down the narrow metal-walled corridor, his breath quick and shallow. He could feel Zenka growing heavier in his arms, its wings still weak but twitching slightly, as though trying to gather what little strength it had left. Every step he took felt like the walls were closing in on him. The air was thick with tension, and each distant thrum from the descending ships sent a wave of urgency through his chest. He had to get out of there. There was no time to waste. Behind him, the sound of approaching footfalls echoed louder as the Baroness's forces closed in. He could almost hear their boots against the metal floors, the soft whir of their weapons preparing for the kill. His mind raced as he turned a corner, leading Zenka through a dark passageway that would take them deeper into the station. Ethan didn't have much hope of outrunning them, but he had to try. His only option was to reach the underground tunnels that stretched beneath the old mining complex. They were poorly mapped, abandoned for decades, but he had a vague idea of their location. If he could get to them, they might lead him to the outskirts of the settlement, a place where he could hide, at least for a while. But even as he made his way through the dark, he knew it wouldn't be enough. The Baroness's fleet wasn't just any military force. They were efficient, cold, and relentless. They would search every inch of the station, and they would stop at nothing until they had Zenka and him. The fact that he had no idea what the creature really was or why it was so important only made things more dangerous. Every moment, the pressure on him mounted. A sharp noise behind him snapped Ethan out of his thoughts. The sound of something heavy crashing to the ground, followed by a voice that sent a chill down his spine. The voice commanded, sharp and clear, through the communicator. It was a woman's voice, cold and demanding. "We know you're here, human. There's nowhere left to run." Ethan's heart skipped. He knew that voice. The sound of it echoed in his mind like an omen of doom. Baroness Mila. He had heard rumors of her rumors that spoke of a ruthless woman who commanded respect through fear, who could crush entire civilizations without hesitation. A woman who never left her prey alive. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward, trying to ignore the pressure building around him. But then, a soft voice, Zenka's telepathic whisper, cut through the tension in his mind. "Turn left," it urged, its voice filled with an ancient calm. "There's a hidden door ahead. They will not expect it." Ethan didn't hesitate. Trusting Zenka's instincts, he veered left, darting down a narrow, winding hallway. His hand brushed against the cold, rusted walls as he searched for any sign of the door Zenka had described. The creature had been eerily accurate so far, and Ethan had no reason to doubt its knowledge of the station. His fingers brushed against a panel, and with a soft hiss, a metal door slid open, revealing a hidden passageway that led downward into the bowels of the station. Ethan didn't wait for a second invitation. He ducked through the doorway, pulling Zenka into the darkness behind him. The door slammed shut just as a blast of energy scorched the metal where they had stood moments before. They were inside. The tunnel was dank and narrow, barely wide enough for them to move through. The air smelled stale, like the remnants of long-abandoned machinery. As Ethan navigated the twisting passageways, he kept his hand on Zenka, still holding the creature close. His thoughts raced. He needed a plan, but he had little time. Zenka's voice returned, soft and purposeful. "There are others. They can help you." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Others?" he asked, a tinge of confusion in his voice. "Who? You'll see," Zenka responded cryptically, its tone unreadable. They continued down the tunnel, the faint hum of machinery echoing around them. It wasn't long before they emerged into a vast underground network of old mining equipment, forgotten by time, scattered throughout the area. Ethan's eyes adjusted to the dim light as he scanned the room. It was a labyrinth of shadows and hidden spaces, a place where the past had been left to decay. "Over there," Zenka's voice urged, and Ethan turned to see a group of people moving out of the shadows. They were well hidden, almost invisible in the dim light, but they were there, three figures in tattered cloaks, faces obscured by the hoods. Ethan froze, hand moving instinctively to his weapon. His instincts screamed that these were not the average miners or scavengers of this place. These people had the look of those who had seen war and survived it. One of the figures stepped forward, pulling down the hood to reveal a face that was marked by experience. His eyes were hard, his expression grim, but his gaze softened slightly as he looked at Ethan. "We've been waiting for you," the man said, his voice rough but steady. "The Baroness has been hunting you, and you've made it this far. But there's more at stake here than you realize." Ethan blinked, trying to process what the man was saying. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice taut with suspicion. "My name's Kale," the man replied, "and these are my associates, Liz and Tessa. We're part of the Free Coalition, a group of rebels fighting against the Empire. You're in more danger than you know, and if you want to get out alive, you'll need our help." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. A rebel faction? That was unexpected. The Free Coalition was nothing more than whispers and rumors in the back alleys of the galaxy, a group known for sabotaging Imperial operations. But if these people were involved, It meant something far more dangerous than just a simple bounty hunt. Kyle continued, his voice low and urgent. The Baroness's empire is built on control and manipulation. She's not just after you for a creature. Zenka is a symbol of something bigger, an ancient weapon that can shift the balance of power in the galaxy. If she controls it, she controls everything. But if we control it, then maybe we can finally stand a chance against her. Ethan felt the weight of the situation crashing down on him. He had saved Zenka out of instinct, out of a desire to protect, but now it seemed as though he had stumbled into something far more complicated and far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. "We need to move," Kale said, urgency in his tone. "The Baroness's fleet is already searching. We don't have much time." Ethan took a deep breath, his mind whirling. This was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a fight for the fate of the galaxy. "All right," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Let's do it." With Kyle and his team leading the way, Ethan had no choice but to follow. As they moved deeper into the underground hideout, the weight of his decision settled on him. He had made an ally in Zenka, but now he had made a dangerous alliance with rebels who were as desperate as they were skilled. And together, they would face the full wrath of Baroness Mila's empire. But as Ethan glanced down at Zenka, its glowing eyes filled with a quiet intensity, he knew one thing for sure: there was more at play than he could possibly understand. And the truth about Zenka and its power was something he was only beginning to uncover. The underground base was a maze of corridors, dimly lit and filled with the hum of ancient technology that had long since been forgotten by the galaxy's more prosperous planets. Ethan followed Kyle, Lies, and Tessa deeper into the complex, his mind swirling with confusion and uncertainty. The rebel coalition had given him a glimpse of the larger battle, one far beyond his understanding. A war that stretched across the very fabric of the galaxy. Zenka, still nestled in his arms, seemed to grow more restless as they moved. The creature's telepathic whispers came more frequently now, each one filled with quiet urgency. The voice, once soft and distant, now rang with a sense of clarity, as though it had found a long-lost purpose. "Do not trust them completely, human," Zenka's voice warned him, a faint tremor of caution in the words. "They are not what they seem." Ethan's grip tightened slightly on the creature. It was still recovering, its body fragile despite the powerful energy it had exhibited. The Arcathian's warning lingered in his mind. Was Zenka suggesting that these rebels, his only hope for survival, could not be fully trusted? Or was it simply the natural suspicion of a creature who had been hunted for so long? "We're close," Kale's voice broke through Ethan's musings, pulling him back to the present. "The main hub is just ahead. That's where we can access the comms to contact our allies. You'll be safe there for now." The tunnel led them to a small makeshift command center. It was a far cry from the gleaming military ships or palatial halls of Baroness Mila's empire. But the consoles flickered with life, a few monitors flashing with the faint traces of active communications. A few more rebels manned the station, working in silence, their eyes tired but focused. Ethan paused just inside the entrance, taking in the scene. Cal moved swiftly to one of the terminals, his fingers flying across the screen as he started typing in commands. Lies and Tessa stood to the side, watching Ethan carefully, as if waiting for him to ask something. The tension in the air was palpable, thick with the weight of secrets and unspoken truths. "You're not just rebels, are you?" Ethan finally asked, his voice steady but filled with suspicion. "You're not just fighting for freedom. What's really going on here?" Kale's eyes flickered briefly, a shadow passing over his face before his expression hardened. He let out a long breath before answering. "We're not just rebels. We're the last of a resistance that's been fighting an ancient war, the war that was forgotten long before the Empire rose to power. And we're fighting not just for freedom, but for survival." The room fell silent as Kale's words hung in the air. Ethan's brow furrowed. He had heard stories of resistance movements, of groups fighting against oppressive regimes. But this sounded different, darker, older, more dangerous. "What war are you talking about?" Ethan asked, his curiosity piqued despite the danger. "And what does Zenka have to do with it?" Kale turned toward him, his face filled with an emotion Ethan couldn't place: regret? Fear? Zenka is the key to ending that war. The creature you saved is not just any Arcathian. It's a living weapon, a weapon that was designed long ago to tip the balance of power in the galaxy. The Arcathians were part of a much larger conflict, one that stretched back to the time of the First Galactic Empires. Ethan stared at Kyle, trying to process his words. Zenka, a living weapon? It seemed impossible. This fragile, injured creature in his arms didn't seem capable of such power. But then again, he had witnessed its strange abilities, its telepathic communication. He had no idea what it could truly do. The Arcathians were part of a failed civilization, Kyle continued, his voice softening. A long time ago, they had a technology that could control the fabric of reality itself, energy manipulation, telepathic bonding, things beyond our understanding. But they were defeated, their knowledge erased, their power sealed away. Zenka, however, is one of the last remnants of that power. Ethan shook his head, his thoughts swirling. But why would the Baroness want it so badly? She's a ruthless ruler, but this sounds like something out of a myth. Why come after a single creature? Kale met Ethan's gaze, his eyes hard. Because the Baroness isn't just after power, she's after control. Zenka's people were the guardians of an ancient power source, a source that, in the wrong hands, could reshape the galaxy. If the Baroness gains control of it, no empire could stand against her. Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. The weight of the situation was becoming clearer now. Zenka wasn't just an alien creature, it was the last piece of a broken puzzle that could change everything. A loud beeping sound cut through the conversation. Kale's fingers moved swiftly, accessing new information on one of the consoles. "They've found us," he muttered under his breath, his voice suddenly tense. Liz moved quickly to the side, reaching for a blaster holstered at her side. "Baroness Myla's forces are here. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they breach the outer perimeter. We need to leave now." Ethan's pulse quickened as he glanced at Zenka, the creature still weak in his arms. But now he understood there was no escaping this. The entire galaxy was closing in around them. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about stopping Myla from seizing the power that Zenka represented. "We're not running," Cal said firmly. "Not yet. We've waited too long for this moment." He turned to one of the nearby terminals, typing rapidly. "We've already initiated the secondary defense protocols. The exit tunnel is still intact, but it'll only hold them off for a short while. We need to get to the control center and send out the signal." Ethan glanced at Kyle, then at Liz and Tessa. They weren't afraid. There was something in their eyes, resolve, determination, that gave him a new understanding of what they were fighting for. This wasn't just about a single creature or a single empire. This was about the fate of the galaxy itself. Zenka's voice filled his mind once more, urgent and sharp. "You must stop her. You must destroy the power before it's too late." Ethan nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. "Let's do it." The underground base shook with the violent rumblings of an impending assault. The low thrum of distant explosions reverberated through the walls, and the dim lights overhead flickered as if the station itself were holding its breath. Ethan stood in the center of the makeshift control room, his heart racing. Zenka, still in his arms, had grown eerily quiet, its glowing eyes dimmed as though it were gathering all its remaining energy for something monumental. "We don't have much time," Kyle said, his voice taut as he worked feverishly at the console. Sweat beaded on his brow, his every movement sharp and precise. "Myla's fleet is on its way. They'll be here in minutes." Tessa and Liz moved to the perimeter, weapons drawn, standing guard at the door as the tension in the air thickened. Their faces were set, each of them ready to face whatever came through that door. Ethan's mind spun. He had come to this mining station hoping to help a wounded alien, only to find himself in the heart of a war he didn't fully understand. And now, the fate of the galaxy rested in his hands. Zenka had shown him glimpses of its power, but even now, Ethan wasn't sure if he truly understood what they were facing. All he knew was that the Baroness, with her empire of fear, would stop at nothing to control whatever Zenka was hiding. Do you have the signal ready? Kyle asked, his voice growing more urgent as he typed in a series of commands. Almost came the sharp reply from Lies, who was monitoring the external defenses. We've activated the jamming devices, but we'll need a few more minutes to lock down the last protocols. The moment they break through, we'll be sitting ducks. Ethan's pulse quickened. He couldn't help but feel the walls closing in. But the moment he glanced down at Zenka, something within him shifted. The creature's fragile form, its tiny body still glowing faintly in his arms, was a symbol of hope and perhaps destruction. The power it contained could end this fight or it could doom them all. Zenka, what should we do? Ethan whispered, his voice trembling slightly. The creature's telepathic voice surged through his mind, not with fear, but with something else, something ancient. The time has come, human. You must choose. You have the power within you. The weapon is not just mine. It is yours too. You must embrace it, or all is lost. Ethan shuddered at the weight of the words. Could he really be the one to wield this power? It felt impossible. Just an ordinary man, caught up in a battle far beyond his understanding. Before he could respond, a distant thunderous crash shook the entire station. The blast was followed by the unmistakable sound of boots clanging against the metal floor. Mila's forces were closing in. They're here, Kale said grimly, looking up from his terminal. Prepare yourselves. Ethan felt the weight of the moment press down on him. He glanced at Kyle, Tessa, and Liz, his reluctant allies in this fight. The rebels were determined, but they were vastly outnumbered. Zenka was their only hope. And yet, the creature's power still seemed like a mystery too much for him to fully comprehend. But there was no time to second-guess. With a deep breath, Ethan turned to face the control terminal. I'm ready. What do I need to do? Kyle gave him a quick nod. Activate the core, Ethan. Zenka can help channel the energy, but only if you can unlock it. We've been trying for years to harness it, but it was always out of reach. You're the key now. The power of the Arcathians is within you. Ethan swallowed hard as he placed his hand on the terminal. He felt it, a strange electric pulse radiating from the control console, flowing through his fingers and into his body. It was like a current, powerful and alive. He had no idea how, but somehow he knew this was Zenka's energy. And it was speaking to him, pushing him to unlock the final piece of the puzzle. Focus, human, Zenka whispered inside his mind. You are not alone. Trust me. Trust yourself. Ethan nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. With a deep breath, he focused on the energy. The terminal hummed in response, the light around them intensifying, growing brighter by the second. The power of the Arcathians surged through him, filling him with knowledge, with strength. For a moment, it was like everything slowed down. The walls of the control room seemed to dissolve, and Ethan could see beyond the station into the very fabric of the universe. He saw the stars, the planets, the forces of nature itself bending to his will. He saw the vast, ancient power that Zenka represented, and it flowed through him like a river, vast and overwhelming. But then, the clarity was gone. The rush of energy subsided. He opened his eyes and saw Kyle, Lice, and Tessa staring at him, wide-eyed and breathless. Did it work? Tessa asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan's hand trembled as he let go of the terminal. I think so. At that moment, the door burst open. Mila's soldiers flooded into the room, weapons raised. They were relentless, but something had changed. Ethan's senses were heightened, his awareness sharper than ever. He felt the power in his body. In his mind, he wasn't just an ordinary human anymore. He was connected to something ancient, something powerful. Before Mila's soldiers could fire, Ethan raised his hand. And in that instant, the air around them seemed to freeze. The soldiers' blasters malfunctioned, their weapons fizzling out as the energy field around them grew stronger. Enough, Ethan said, his voice steady and commanding. Zenka's power coursed through him like a living thing. The soldiers backed away, fear in their eyes, as they realized that they were no longer in control. The very laws of nature seemed to bend to Ethan's will. But then, The voice of Baroness Mila herself rang through the control room. "You think you can stop me, human?" She sneered, her voice cold and filled with menace. "I will have what is mine. You cannot stop me." Ethan turned, his eyes locking onto the woman standing at the entrance, flanked by her elite guards. Her presence was overwhelming, like a storm closing in. "This ends now," Ethan said,